So are we live right now that it's 4? Is it like out there?
Yeah, I think we are good to go. We're actually going to go ahead and get started, I think, as people start coming in here. So for folks who are joining us here on Spaces, this is an exciting first for pretty much all of us from the AMP America team doing our first Spaces. So thank you for joining us, and we're really excited to go through and talk about today specifically a really cool new cartoon series that just came out here on AMP America, an exclusive. And joining us to talk about that is Matt Edwards. He's one of the producers. So let's dig into this, the Extremist Files. Matt, before we kind of talk about the genesis of the Extremist Files, do us a quick favor, introduce yourself here to the audience here on our Spaces. And what kind of was the thought process behind getting the Extremist Files rolling?
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and welcome, folks. So I have spent a career in Los Angeles and Hollywood, working in independent film, television, digital media, and just banding about the classic freelance work that you could get. But I did pretty well for myself because I'm now looking back, consider myself like, hey, I made myself a career there doing this stuff. So, so it's great. That being said, it brought me all the way to the point in my career where I really wanted to dive into, I really took to Andrew Breitbart's popular phrase, which is politics is downstream of culture. And being somebody who has been pretty much conservative, right-leaning, free market guy my entire adult life, I really wanted to make a difference because spending time working on set, and that's what I did as a producer, as a first assistant director or a director. You spend a lot of time on set working in Hollywood, and just everybody's free to talk whatever they want and discuss politics and social issues. And it's true, the prevailing thought in Hollywood is all on the left side of this perspective. So if you want to keep working and you want to get along with everybody, you just you either keep your mouth shut or you kind of maneuver your words carefully as you go from job to job. So it really got tiring, and I really wanted to make sure that what I was doing, what I was contributing to the world, was something that I could get behind in terms of my worldview. So I started actively seeking more like-minded folks to work with. And long story short, I actually met Seamus Coughlin a few years ago. I mean, many years ago now. And because he was a guy who ramped up starting to do FreedomToons. And I was in the storytelling space, obviously. And so when we hooked up and had a few conversations and met up a few times, we always got along. We always liked each other, and we thought, hey, maybe someday we can work on a project. So flash forward to getting past COVID and going through what we all just went through. I find myself in North Idaho with my family, hunkering down and doing good work here in Idaho, which maybe we can get into a little bit later. But this opportunity came up where we had some funding to launch something that dealt with the narrative of extremism. And the idea of a partner that I was working with at the time was, let's see if we could find a cartoonist that could make it like a cartoon or some sort of series that dealt with this. And so my first thought, of course, was Seamus. So I called up my old friend Seamus. I pitched him on the idea, and he was down. He was gung-ho for it. The man is extremely busy. I have no idea if he'll pop into this space tonight because he's hard to pin down, but that's because if you guys are familiar with his work, give him a thumbs up or a big 100 or something, like, because that guy churns out amazing content. It's like South Park, the guy just, he's on top of the narrative and just, and is able to turn out content. So anyway, we got together and bandied about a few different ideas, and this was what came out of it. So I'll stop there. And I know that was a lot of information at one time.
No, this is great. And really quick, before I kind of go through some of the things you highlighted there, Matt, really want to shout out to the folks who are joining us today. Thank you for hanging out. See, we got Surly here. We got John, Tim's joining us. So thank you, Remzo. Thank you for joining the AMP America Spaces here on Twitter. We're really excited. We're going to do a Q&A, by the way, as we get towards the second half of the conversation with Matt Edwards, producer of the Extremist Files, which is a new cartoon being exclusively aired on AMP America, which we are very excited to be a part of. I know I have my show here, the Brian Nichols Show, on AMP America. And it's funny, Matt, we were just talking about what you were saying earlier, the idea of politics being downstream from culture. And how important it is to not only address the culture, but to have a leading voice in the culture, to create culture. And Seamus, I love that you brought Seamus to this project, because Seamus is just an absolutely amazing mind when it comes to being able to take some of these very controversial ideas sometimes and break it down to sometimes their most basic level, but in such a way that is so easy for the consumer to digest and understand and appreciate. And when I was on Timcast and I sat next to Seamus, and I mean, he had me rolling, laughing, because he's so quick, he's so witty. And as you're looking at the Extremist Files, Matt, kind of talk to me about what did what did Seamus bring to the table from kind of that creative standpoint to help add his own flair to the project and really, in your opinion, bring it over the top?
Oh, I mean, the guy's brilliant, and he steals the show anytime he's around. The guy has so many great one-liners. He just, he drops bombs all over the place. So he's hilarious, and he's such a sweet man. He's a sweet guy, and he's very meticulous with how he wants to approach these things. And so when we got into this, it was okay. So, let's deal with this narrative of extremism, because everybody's on the right is being called extremists for things that were normal, like we used to, for those of us who were, living 10 years ago and thinking the same things and doing the same things, like all of a sudden that's now considered extreme. So if you feel like it's ridiculous to put a mask on a 2-year-old child as they go to daycare, all of a sudden you're a grandma killer.
By the way, doesn't it just feel weird to even say, like, utter out loud that was even something that happened, like a mask on a 2-year-old?
Yes, exactly. I mean, to you and me, of course, but there are still people today that say, well, that's what we have to do, and we'll do it again.
Yep,
my friend. We'll do it again, harder this time, right? So, so when we're sitting around, and I say sitting around because we're meeting, of course, over nowadays everything's over Zoom and everything. But when we're getting together, trying to figure out this series, and it really was looking at okay, well, who are the real extremists? If we're looking at the world today, it's those who are forcing masks on 2-year-olds, or who are forcing you to take an experimental medical treatment, right? Or even outside of the COVID world, those of you who would say you're not allowed to defend yourself in public. Like, you can't walk around with a firearm. You can't. In fact, we have to ban firearms from schools. I'm a huge proponent of removing gun-free zone signs from schools. I mean, that's like a target. It's like target practice, right? I mean, there's all these things that it's common sense for those of us that value individual rights and freedom, and to just want to live your life. And so all these tyrannical attitudes are like, we're sick of it. We're absolutely sick of it. So it was really easy to kind of flip the script a little bit and say, well, who are the extremists? And in banding about different ideas, we settled upon, okay, let's take the classic buddy cop formula that you see in movies. The old veteran cop and then the rookie cop. We've seen that all the time, right? And so we said, let's set this in these agents, these government agents. So you've got Jack, who's this very extreme agent, and then you got Jane, who's new to the force, but very reasonable. And let's send them out into the world. And there's no shortage of extreme examples that we could we've already touched on a few. And as you see in the first episode that launched, we hit a bunch right off the bat, especially dealing with COVID. And so the process really was just sitting there with Seamus and going over these ideas and picking out some to work on. And then honestly, like you walk away and you reconvene in a week or two, and Seamus has a script, and we go through the first draft of the script and find the jokes, refine, tweak things, find good buttons, find moments where we should end it or extend it, with a goal of making this 2 minutes, and then once the script was set, Seamus's team, they're like we've seen before with FreedomToons, they just go out there, they animate. They we went through character design. It was a very conscious decision to figure out what these folks were going to look like. Jane and Dick and Jane were going to look like, what children would look like, what adults would look like, and how they would come across, the background. I mean, everything was built out. It wasn't just grabbing stuff off the shelf generically off Canva or something. This was like everything was meticulously looked at, and we did a few tests with different styles, and then we're pretty excited to have landed on what we have here. So once you have a script and that went into production, it was time to work on the next one, and that's where we land.
Great stuff, Matt, and welcome to some of our new listeners here in our AMP America spaces. Welcome to Clint, welcome to Matt, welcome to EQ Mom. We are going to have some listeners join here shortly, and then afterwards we're going to do an open Q&A. But before we get there, Matt, I do have one last question to wrap up my interview portion, and that is, this feels like the start of something that could be bigger, I feel. And, I'm really excited to be part of the AMP America team. I know you're part of the AMP America team. And, looking at where the Extremist Files is today, where do you see it growing? What's kind of the vision for the Extremist Files? Could you give us a little bit of the preview of what's to come?
Well, as we go through the coming weeks, we'll have some more episodes coming out, which I'm really excited about. The next one's is really good, and it hits home for me. It deals with school boards, and I have my own local battles with my own school board here. But that being said, what Seamus. Well, I'm really a champion of Seamus. Like, I feel like I should be an agent here and really pitch Seamus, to the entire world here, because what Seamus has been able to do over the years is, like we said earlier, he comments brilliantly on everything that's going on in the world, and he does it rather quickly and on his feet, and it takes a lot of work. But I feel like what we've created here is something that is almost a proof of concept for a larger series. If you think about American Dad or Family Guy or The Simpsons or Bob's Burgers or any one of these more traditional long form animated sitcoms, this is a no brainer. This is a no brainer. Because it's funny. It's truly, truly funny. And even if you're somebody who was like all gung ho about all the COVID pandemic restrictions, and you're coming out of that going, yeah, that was kind of wild. You're gonna laugh. And that's the goal here is to entertain. But so there's no shortage of that in terms of it being funny and it being able to be built out. But if you just look at the story structure of this, you've got two agents who are clearly have two different backgrounds and styles and character development that they can go through, and you have a world that we've created, which is our world. They could have superiors on the show. There could be confidential informants. There could be normal people that they run into episode by episode. They could have families. They could have friends. They could have colleagues. The whole thing here is two agents, just like the X-Files, who every episode have to go out and investigate some claim of extremism. And like we said earlier, there's no shortage of things that are being called extreme these days that we could just simply laugh at. So I have high hopes that somebody out there can see the potential for this being a huge hit series, and may want to get into talks with us to develop this further. But not to get too far ahead of it now. I think the idea of just continuing with these short 2-minute episodes would also be great. And the next episode there's going to be a cameo in there. So all the voice, Seamus does the voice of Dick, and a bunch of the other voices that you'll hear in the series. I mean, the guy's a one-man marching band. I mean, it's incredible. The amount of stuff that he can accomplish, but it'd be great to have cameos. Cameos from you and Tim and anybody else who's on here. Can come in here and do a quick cameo. It's just a voiceover. You got a good mic, Brian. You've got a good mic, so you can do it for sure. It would be great to just continue this and serve it up on X, and that's the best part. The last thing I'll say, if I can shift gears real quick,
for sure,
is the ability for us to get this out on X is huge. Yes. Because this platform is huge, and what Elon Musk has been able to do with opening this up to so many different voices again is that we could have put this on YouTube and spent tons and tons of money trying to get views and trying to get it in front of people and stuff, and just be drowned out or censored. But here, I mean, just punching it out organically and getting word of mouth out there. I mean, that's how it should be, especially if it's good. And I think this is good. I think it's funny.
Oh, I can't agree more. I laughed the whole time I was watching the first episode. And by the way, I do want to go back to something you did raise up, because I don't know if everybody saw today, because obviously we're all excited for the State of the Union. Very excited for our fearless leader to articulate his vision for the country. And I want to hear his way he's going to outline his view of our State of the Union. But with that in mind, one underlying news item that came out today was that the federal government has been illegally surveilling and building profiles of Americans in a secret portal called the DSAC for those who oppose, are you ready for this, firearm restrictions, lockdowns, and vaccine mandates, and or support border security, and are labeling them as domestic extremists. Source, the House Judiciary Committee, and additional documentation from judiciary.house.gov. So that's a little dystopian. And how about this? We'll add in to the conversation here Tim Sharp and John Dennis. So Tim is joining us here from the AMP America group that we're part of here today as one of our columnists, and then John Dennis from the Republican Liberty Caucus. He is the chairman. John and Tim, we're going to get you guys here into the stage. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, Remzo, if we can get them added as a speaker. And while he's checking that out, welcome to our new listener as well. I think Clint joined. Yep, Clint, thanks for joining.
Yeah, to that point, Brian, about I mean that just shows you how much more material the Extremist Files is going to be able to have now, right? I mean, it's as if they're watching what we're doing and they're like, hey, that's actually a really good idea.
Tim, it looks like you got the added here with the speaker. If you're able to unmute, and then John, looks like you just joined us as well, and you can join the conversation. We're good to go.
Yeah, thanks for having me on tonight, guys. And I had not heard about this portal, but I was very active during the COVID lockdowns. I'm a Pro 2A guy, so I'm glad to know that the federal government's going to give me some credit for that. It's pretty based.
Congratulations! Yeah, you're on the list. I think we're all on the list right now. John, what do you think? Are you on the list? John,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
there we go.
How's it going? I'm sorry. I just jumped in here. Which list are we talking about?
Oh, the extremist list. The DS. The DSAC, or was that what it was called? DSAC. For those who oppose the firearm restrictions, lockdowns, and vaccine mandates, or support border security.
I have been around way too long. I'm sure I'm on everybody's list.
I think John's checking every box on the list, actually.
Yeah, and in San Francisco, I'm on all their local lists too.
So, John and Tim, with the Extremist Files, I mean, we talk about culture, right? I mean, do you see something like the Extremist Files reaching? And then for my show, the Brian Nichols show, part of AMP America, we talk about meeting people where they're at, right? And really specifically on the issues they care about. Do you think that this is going to hit that target audience and people who are awake to what's actually happening right now?
You know, I do, and I think that it brings entertainment value. Sometimes in politics, we get too preachy. Not everything has to be a sermon.
Yep.
Sometimes things just have to be entertaining to give it value and to spread a message at the same time. And I think that's where the value comes in with the Extremist Files.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just an enormous appetite for, for the new counterculture, which is what we are. And people want to be told the truth. And, this has all the earmarks of the kind of show that and, kind of content that is actually going to get people's attention. And people like a laugh, as it turns out. And the one thing that the regime hates is being laughed at. So everything's pointing in the direction of success here.
Can't agree more. How about this? We're going to go ahead and go towards a Q&A for Matt, as well as for if anybody has questions for Tim or John. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. I think that's an option you can do here on Spaces. Again, this is our first space, so give us credit where credit's due, I guess, for learning on the fly. But as questions kind of come in, Matt, I wanted to quickly just kind of jump back to you because, we talked about Seamus coming in and bringing his style to the table, and I just want to look back at the culture. You mentioned this kind of feels like it has the option to go the route of something like an American Dad, a Family Guy, a South Park. I actually kind of was thinking when I was watching the first episode that the characters resemble like a South Park meets FreedomToons. That was kind of the vibe I felt. But like when you kind of build something more in terms of the cultural space, there's the actual show. Do you envision maybe going beyond the show? Something like I think of the memorabilia, the stickers, the shirts, all that kind of stuff. Is that an avenue that you're going to go down to really get the word out there about the Extremist Files, but maybe a different, more guerrilla marketing type of approach?
Yeah, that's great because I mean, what you're talking about here is creating a brand, right? So like the Extremist Files I think it naturally has that ability to have that brand, whether it's co-opting some of the terms that the right has been using about, not complying and I don't know, I can't think of some of the brilliant memes that have come out over the past 3-4 years, but I think with anything like this, a brand can emerge from it. But more importantly too, I think is that the more that it can stir, the more like folks said earlier, we're right. We need this. We need this type of entertainment. We need this type of outlet, and it's a big reason why we see, especially on X, video and memes and stuff that gets shared that advance our worldview and kind of reframe everything exactly where it belongs, which is in the realm of sanity, right? And so if you can touch people where they're at, and you can create a brand, and you can have Dick and Jane phrases and stuff on T-shirts or become a meme themselves, that's only going to help normalize and make this the mainstream, because we are the mainstream, right? Like the silent majority types. Like that's I was asked yesterday when I was speaking with Austin Peterson, I was asked where how is this the time for the right to be creative, or the people on the right can be creative? And it really comes down to the people on the right have always been creative. It's just who has had access to the mainstream audience, and the access in Hollywood is controlled by ideologues who do not want to give any quarter to folks on the right. And if they do, then they're put into a special box. They're kept in this almost this cartoon world. I'm thinking of that. What was that TV show? Parks and Rec. Nick Offerman, yep. Right? He played. I forget his character's name, but he was the libertarian, of Parks and Rec, and it was like, oh, that was so great, and everybody thought that was a big win, for right-leaning people, but it was actually he was kept in a box, and it was shown to be odd. He was an odd man out, and everybody else was normal. And so if we can move forward and this thing catches fire and people want to create memes and come up with one-liners and stuff. I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, I think that stuff comes organically. You can't really force that on people. It could cost a lot of money, and then you fail. But I don't think when Star Wars hit, everybody was thinking that all the Star Wars figures would be worth so much as they are. But hey, I'm not against making a buck,
Well, especially when it helps like actually share the culture, right? And I mean, you mentioned Star Wars. I mean, half of what Star Wars was built for was the memorabilia, right? It was the ability to be sold. And then obviously that turned into what you highlighted, some of those pieces turning into priceless pieces. What's that special Boba Fett? But that's not what we're talking about here today. That's the Star Wars spaces on a different channel. I saw we had Carrie Sloan join us here. She's a gun activist. We're going to get Carrie up maybe for a quick joining us for a question I think maybe was going to be asked. Carrie, are you there, or are we able to get her added yet, Remzo? We're getting there. And by the way, again, thanks for folks joining us here on our Twitter Spaces from AMP America. Really excited to be showcasing the new series on AMP America, our new The Extremist Files. So we have our producer Matt Edwards here has been highlighting that. Remzo's getting you added, Carrie. So as you get added and as questions come in, please go ahead and raise your hands here as questions come in. But how about from a standpoint of let's kind of look at telling stories through cartoons, because I think there's a lot more you can do creatively, right? And in terms of like being able to go outside the box. You mentioned how Ron Swanson, and that was the character, by the way, from Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec.
Yes, Ron Swanson.
Ron Swanson, like how he kind of was kept inside a box, and that sometimes is the creative choice of the actor themselves. When you look at the cartoon medium, do you find that maybe there's more of an ability to tell stories here and to get more creative in the stories?
Well, absolutely. I mean, because of animation, you're able to create whatever world you want, right? And it costs the same to draw a mechanic working on a car than it does a mechanic working on a spaceship, beyond Mars, right? In the real world, that costs a lot of money, but in the digital world, it costs the same. And if you're drawing it in a cartoon. That being said, if we can use Family Guy as an example, I think they took that to the extreme. If people remember Family Guy, anytime one of the characters says, it reminds me of the time of this, and then they cut to that moment and it's completely off the wall, right? Yep. And you can do that because of animation. That became that sort of thing became a joke in and of itself. And people were making fun of the fact that Family Guy always did that, because it almost ended up being a crutch. It was like, if your story wasn't funny, then just go random real quickly, and it'll be funny. And I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, and neither is Seamus. I mean, you can just watch any of his work. Everything is grounded. So even though it's animation and you're able to do it, and you're able to do a lot, that you wouldn't be able to do in a live action, or at least for the amount of money that it would take, you really should have it grounded. And that's why we've seen success even in shows like The Simpsons, or if I remember, King of the Hill was also on for a long time in terms of animation, and those were very grounded animated shows, and they were taken seriously, to an extent. And so I think when it comes to animation, while you can do anything, the key to a good story, the key to storytelling is having it grounded in something that is true, that people can watch it and go, I can believe that happens. I mean, if you've got people walking away from an animated series or a movie or something, and they feel for the characters, then you've touched them at a level that can only have been grounded, even though they're a fake, they're a cartoon. They're just, or I mean, there's a real voice behind it, but even where we're headed now, who knows if all the voices are going to be by real actors? It could all be AI. This entire broadcast right now could be AI. Everybody. We have no idea. So, so I think that answers your question, hopefully.
Oh no, it absolutely did. And we do have Carrie who just joined us. And Carrie, I would love to get kind of your perspective here as a gun activist. You know, we talk about being able to talk about controversial topics in maybe a more easy to digest way. What's kind of your view of the Extremist Files being a medium to bring an issue like gun rights, for example, to the table?
Well, considering that, hey, thanks for having me on, by the way. Considering that any of us that want to do any sort of firearms training are getting ready to be regulated or banned or whatever, we're already considered extremists, I think it might be a great medium to actually start doing firearm fundamentals training at this point, because, you know, to skirt the system, I'm a system hacker, so anything that can be done to hack that system is I'm here for. But as you watch the expansion of what is being classified as extremist behavior, I think that, I mean, obviously humor is always a way to get to people. I'm very active on other platforms as well, and cartoons and quick clips like that tend to do really well, and people will stop and listen to them. But as we're seeing more and more, you know, independent to conservative leaning individuals being classified as extremists for growing their own food or wanting to be able to defend themselves with a firearm, it may be a good medium to reach people and kind of hack the system at the same time. You know, of course, until they, you know, regulate cartoons, which I could see easily happening.
Don't put that out there, Carrie. My goodness, don't give them bad ideas.
I know. I should. What was I thinking? I know. I said it. Sorry, universe. I just kidding. Person, my multiple people watching me on all my lists, but but you know, it's I love the concept of it. I mean, because I can appreciate that. I've always thought that, you know, things like what's the God, Carrie? I just had it in my head and I lost it. What's the one that's been on for South Park? You know, or even The Simpsons, really, for that matter. You know, they've been doing that kind of stuff forever, and I think it's at the end of the day, and, you know, and I'll wrap my statement about it up, but it's a really good way to get people to think and see things that typically they wouldn't because of the medium that it's being presented in. And so I'm here for it. I mean, any way that we can hack that system of getting the message and the information out is great. And obviously, you know, we've seen, you know, South Park, Simpsons do it for, 30 years. South Park for 20 plus years. I think it's definitely, I think y'all are onto something with this, and I'm kind of excited to see where it's going to go.
Likewise. So Matt, I want to, I know we're at the 30-minute mark, which we put aside here for the AMP America first ever Twitter Spaces, where we're promoting our new mini series, the Extremist Files. You know, Matt, as we kind of go towards the tail end here, you know, what would you want the audience to take away from the Extremist Files? You know, what is it? Just culture? Do you want this to turn into maybe a messaging tool, something to spark conversations? What do you kind of think the goal is for the series? As we're, you know, kind of looking at the impact on the actual overall culture?
I think it's laughing. Like, I want people to laugh. I mean, as a producer, as somebody who's made a career in Hollywood trying to stir emotions, whether it's laughter or crying or thrilling, you know, dramatic, whatever it is, like at the core of it, the reason I got into this business was to touch people's hearts and minds. And when it comes to a comedy like this, I want you to laugh. That being said, like we said earlier, understanding the impact that culture has had on our society, we have a moral obligation to put out good things and to help advance our worldview and what has been laid before us and what the founders have given us in this country, and it's a big responsibility. And I think when I think about storytelling, I'll leave with this: the power of storytelling, and you can see it in two different examples. And one is when you look at comedy breeds trust in the audience. So, for example, take a look at, for instance, Jon Stewart, who's just came back to The Daily Show, right? Everybody's been crying, well, we need Jon Stewart back, right? Well, the reason why Jon Stewart was so influential is because he's funny. even if you disagreed with his politics or you disagreed with the segments that he did, it was funny. It was objectively funny. And so nobody likes to be on the butt end of a joke, right? You want to be in the box with everybody else who's laughing at whatever you're laughing at, if the joke is a ridiculing joke. So that's the power of storytelling, is that if the jester is pointing at somebody and everybody is laughing at them, then that's the target. And nobody wants to be that one who's being pointed to. So if we're able to create enough laughter where we've turned that pointing finger back onto the king where it belongs in some cases, and then everybody can laugh at the king because he has no clothes on, then that's powerful. That's extremely powerful. On the other side of the coin is fear, horror movies or thrillers, things that cause people to act, And so if comedy breeds trust, fear breeds action. Nobody goes to a theater and watches a film, and if they get scared, if they're watching a thriller about Michael Myers, walking into unlocked homes, when you get home from the theater, what's the first thing you do? You lock all your doors. I mean, Michael Myers isn't coming to get you, but it certainly scared you enough. You're like, you know what? It wouldn't hurt me to just lock the door. So you can take that to its logical end with so many things that Hollywood has scared people into, what the mainstream media scares people into. We can go back to COVID and what it made everybody go out and do because they were scaring the hell out of us. But now's the time to laugh. And so I hope people take away from this laughter, and if it allows them to point the finger back at and speak truth to power, then that's the big bonus.
All right, I think we are going to wrap it up there. Awesome, Matt. We're really excited to see where this grows, and obviously looking at adding more series to the future, and I'm looking forward to buying my T-shirt for the Extremist Files. So thank you again for helping make this a reality, and thank you for also bringing Seamus in, because adding his little his added just kind of Seamus-isms, if that's the way to put it, you really can't you can't do it better than he. So with that, folks, thank you for joining us again for our first AMP America Spaces, and we'll have to make sure we do this again. But with that being said, I think we're going to wrap up right here. Thanks again, folks.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.